Mr. Clerk, before we begin the formal meeting, we do have an interview, and the candidate is present, Judge Rosalind Grant. She had to leave the courts to come over for the I asked her to come early so we could interview her and she can go back to her job.
Do we have a resume?
I don't know.
This is a reappointment.
When this is over, Judge, make sure you get to see John James, Councilman John James. Please come.
Morning, Mayor. Come up.
Morning.
Hold on, just one moment, Judge Grant. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome
yes.
to the Newark Municipal Council's public pre-meeting. Madam President, we are discussing the interview for page 27, 8M. This is the reappointment of Judge Rosalind Holmes Grant as a municipal court judge. Judge Grant, would you just state your name and address for the record, please?
Thank you. Rosalind D. Holmes Grant, address of 7 Kinzel Lane, West Orange, New Jersey, 07052.
Judge Grant, you have been nominated by the mayor for reappointment as a municipal court judge. Do you have a statement that you wish to make to the council before they begin their questions?
My statement, good morning, Council President, council members of Newark Municipal Council. Once again, I'm honored, I am humbled, and always nervous, which is an excellent thing because we should never be prepared or expect for things to happen. I've been honored for the past 15 years to have the blessing to serve on the Newark Municipal Court bench. And today, I first asked for excusal. I have 3 electronic devices, and I know they're not required in the council chambers, but I am on also 24-hour bail duty this week. This is my bail week, so I accept. And I ask you to excuse me for the electronic devices in case I get any emergency calls. So, and I appreciate, I honor, and I thank the mayor for making that recommendation. And again, I would look to you and hopefully for that support and consideration so I can continue to serve the community in Newark and in the county and in the state at large. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments, questions? Yes. Councilman Keaton.
I rode up with the judge on the elevator.
Oh, did you?
And she was working. And she said, "I'll talk to you later, but I gotta do some work." So, and it's a pleasure to known you these many years. I mean, I used to have black hair when I met you a long time ago. I just want to say thank you for your service and what you have done, and your husband. You have made us very proud, the city of Newark. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman James and then Councilman Gonzalez.
I just want to thank the judge for her service, exemplary service to the city of Newark, and I look forward to having you continue serving the citizens of the city of Newark. Thank you very much.
I'd like to also thank you for your service. We go back a long time, your family, and I think they're a role model for the city of Newark, and we look forward to your continued service.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Judge Grant.
Anyone else? Well, I certainly, I'm sorry.
Congratulations.
I certainly want to add my own personal comments. I'm absolutely delighted that you agreed to return to the bench here in the city of Newark. I too, as you, I thank the mayor, and I also thank the chief of staff. So it was an easy lift. But there's something about you that most of the people sitting before you that they do not know. She is an advocate and a very strong supporter of Pink Goes Red. Now, 2 of the greatest sororities in the world, Delta Sigma Theta Incorporated and Alpha Kappa Alpha, do an annual event where we put aside whatever the differences are and we raise money and awareness. And I need to tell you, the inaugural chair of that event was none other than Judge Rosalind Grant. And you have set a standard, not just for what you do in your official capacity, but also what you do for the community.
Thank you very much. It's an honor, and I look forward, and everyone can still come to the event this January, February, when we have it. And right, actually, it'll be outside by council chambers, correct?
Right.
Yes.
Yes, we do.
Thank you.
So this time, we'll send copies, invitations to all the council members.
Excellent.
Yes.
You have to wear
Definitely
pink or
will.
red.
Pink or red?
They can wear red. It's okay. They can wear red. It's pink
okay.
goes red.
We're warming up.
I got pink.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Judge.
Thank you very much, everyone. It's a continued honor, and I will go to continue to serve because each and every one of you, when I stand before the community and the residents of the city of Newark, I see all of you. So thank you very much.
Regards to your husband.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk, it's all yours.
We are on page 2 of the agenda. Are there any questions from the council for the reports of the boards and commissions?
Propaganda.
Next item.
Ordinance on first reading 6FA is a ordinance granting a 5-year tax abatement to the residential property located at 511 Fifth Street.
Councilman, any comments? Thumbs up. Next item.
B is a ordinance granting a 5-year tax abatement to the residential property located at 338 South 6th Street.
Has anyone spoken to the councilwoman regarding, I personally plan
They
to
don't
vote
come
for it.
before us.
Mm,
These don't come before us.
Yes,
This is statutory, so if
yes.
they comply with the statute, they are given the abatement.
I do believe I see,
No
Mr.
one's on her office.
Okay, we'll deal with it as suggested. Next item, Mr. Clerk.
Ordinance on public hearing, second reading and final passage. 6PSFA is an ordinance amending section 23:2-1 one-way streets. This would amend the one-way street designation for East Runyon Street between Elizabeth Avenue and Freeland-Heising Avenue.
Sponsor.
Second.
Roll call.
Okay, we'll call one tomorrow.
That's true.
B is an ordinance granting a 5-year tax abatement to the residential property located at 625 Hunterdon Street.
Sponsor.
I'll second it.
Next item, Mr. Clerk.
C is a ordinance granting a 15-year tax abatement to the Livingston Urban Renewal LLC to acquire 82 affordable rental housing units for properties located at 18-30 17th Avenue, 152-164 Irving Turner Boulevard, 168-184 Irving Turner Boulevard, 194-200 Irving Turner Boulevard, and 202-208 Irving Turner Boulevard. Council President, due to the an issue with the advertisement for this ordinance, we will have to defer action until the next council meeting.
Madam President,
Yes, Councilman Ramos.
I have a question on C and D. I know they went before the tax abatement committee, and my understanding is that there were some questions that were raised by the state monitor. So I don't know if Jack or Mr. I didn't see Mr. Neff. They could just summarize some of the issues that the state had identified with these two abatements.
Any other comments?
No,
Oh,
Carmelo.
you're here.
Julio Colon, Director of Housing. Are we talking about the Somerset and Livingston?
C and D.
Yes.
I'm sorry?
Yes.
Okay. The issue was that with respect to the due diligence that he wanted, was not the due diligence with respect to the financial analysis that we do with NW Financial and more details. He wanted more details with respect to why we would consider providing them a 15-year tax abatement. Now, they have already an existing 12-year tax abatement. We were just adding 3 more years onto the tax abatement, so that clarification had to be provided as well. Through more negotiations with him, he had insisted on wanting to make sure that we increase the annual service charge. So we did that by 1 percentage point to 7.28. from 6.28 that was originally recommended by the committee. We had increased it to 7.28. Also, we had, because of the new ordinance, we wanted to be able to include in there as well the 1% that would go to the school fund. And so basically it was an issue of that he felt that he didn't have enough detail information to be able to make a decision on the project. One of the mistakes that was caught also was that in the financial analysis, it had stated that it was the individual had stated that it was going for almost a 30-year tax abatement because he misinterpreted, the financial analysis misinterpreted what we had sent them as information. So that was written incorrectly when they had recommended to proceed. So they had said, why do they need a tax abatement if we're, to a great extent. So that was part of the issue.
Madam President,
Yes, Councilman.
I see Mr. Neff here, so I don't know if he wants to add anything.
Yes. He was standing for a moment, so.
Just
I
prior
presume.
to Mr. Neff speaking, one of the things that Mr. Colon said that when the Tax Abatement Committee recommended the 6.28, the Tax Abatement Committee was not made aware of NW Financial's concerns regarding these two particular properties. And the Tax Abatement Committee, myself, Councilman James, as well as Councilman Gonzalez, had instructed staff to make sure that we had NW Financial analysis at every tax abatement for every project, and that was not provided to us at the time. Subsequently had a conversation with Mr. Neff, and he made me aware as the chairperson that he, in fact, had access to information that the committee did not have. And over the course of the tax abatement process, Councilman James, as well as Councilman Gonzalez and I, have instructed EHD that 6.28 is the floor. It is not the ceiling. So we have asked the folks that negotiate these type of tax abatements to get the maximum amount, and especially based on the information that is provided from the seller as well as the buyer, in order for us to be able to come back and make those type of recommendations to the full body.
Mr. Neff,
If I could just
please state
add,
your name and position.
Thomas Neff, State Monitor, working for Department of Community Affairs. I know at a council meeting about a month ago or so, there were some concerns raised about why was the monitor holding up this particular abatement, both Somerset and Livingston. And I just want to clarify for the public record that when the monitor looks at, whether it's me or someone else, looks at these sorts of economic development deals, we're looking for two things. One, to make sure that the folks in the city who are doing the work on these sorts of projects truly understand what they're looking at and that they've made a reasonable decision to advance a particular project, whether it's a negotiated sale of property or whether it's an exemption for a particular property in a pilot. And we look to make sure that there's a reasonable decision, but we also look to make sure that the city's extracting from the developers something that's fair and reasonable and the most they can out of the developers. The city's not giving away more than it needs to give away. And I have to be fairly blunt with this body. One of the departments that since May when I got here, we've had the hardest time getting good information out of about why decisions are being made, why sales prices are what they are, why pilots are what they are, has been this particular department. And so I think there's been a lot of improvement in the last month or so with Carmelo Garcia coming into the department. And I know there's some other leadership changes that are going on there. And the two abatements that are before you, Livingston and Somerset, are sort of one example of that process where we're trying to help the department do the best it can with the developers to get the best deal for the city possible. And I'm sort of glad to see that the delay of this particular project has resulted in about a 20% increase in the payment that the developer will be making to the city, and without any impact to the residents who are in those buildings. It won't make it any less affordable for them. They'll have a little bit of less of a reserve, but it's a better deal for the city, and I think this process worked well. And there's probably about 10 different economic development projects that we've held up at the state level to kick back to the department to say, look, give us a little bit better information, explain what due diligence has been done to get the best deal for the city, and we'll approve them as soon as we're given documentation that things are reasonable and that the best deal possible is being gotten for the city. So,
Any
thanks.
other comments,
Thank you for the opportunity to
questions
clarify.
for Mr. Neff?
I thank Mr. Neff for his due diligence, because that's something that I have always wanted, to get the best deal for the city. And in some cases, I am appalled that we are selling properties for the price that we are selling them. But so thank you very much for your due diligence.
Yeah, Madam President.
Yes, Councilman Ramos.
And, I too want to thank Mr. Neff for his work in this area. I know in the past he's held up a few abatements until he ensured that we did get our percentage of school funding included as part of the abatement agreement, and I'm glad to see that we're increasing the amount that the developers are paying as part of their service fee. And I know our committee is very active, and for you to be in a position to ensure that they have access to the information that they need in order to review these abatement agreements is important. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next item, Mr. Clerk.
We have also discussed 6PSNFD, which we will also be deferring. 6PSNFE is an ordinance amending 6PSNFE adopted September 5th, 1973, Ordinance 6PSNFC adopted September 5th, 1973, and Ordinance 6PSNFD adopted March 4th, 1981, to remove the reservations granted to the city for the purpose of maintaining and operating a certain water main, and to authorize the execution of an agreement for the relocation of the water main and execution of a permanent easement for the maintenance and relocation of the water main.
Comments? Next item, Mr. Clerk.
F is a ordinance to convey 49 9th Avenue to the County of Essex for open space and parking for the new Essex County Vocational Technical School.
Thank you. Next item, Mr.
Ramos.
Clerk.
I have a second, Councilman Ramos.
I'm sorry?
Councilman Ramos is your second.
Yeah, we had our previous mover and seconder.
49.
They wouldn't let me do it.
Madam President, if I may ask the clerk, let's say we are deferring C and D, and I understand it's because advertising. What was the problem with the advertising?
On the previous agenda, these items, the resolutions call for the 6.28% fee. The true number should have been 7.28. We were not given a new resolution, a new ordinance, so we advertised it at the old 6.2. So we need to re-advertise it at the 7.2.
Okay.
We're waiting for a document from EHD.
Okay.
Resolution 7R1A is a budget insertion for the immunization program.
Next item.
B is a bid contract to provide water system repair parts and fittings.
Any comments? Next item.
C is a bid contract to provide snow removal services.
Next item.
Madam President, I
I'm sorry.
see only 8 providers here. Are we contracting with any more? Because normally we have like 30 people providing services, and here we have only 8.
Khalif Thomas, Acting Director, Department of Public Works. The other 2 vendors, it was 10, but 2 of them was non-responsive, so we canceled them out, and
So
we only have 8.
vendors are going to
Yes.
provide the service.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Thomas? Next item, Mr.
Thomas, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Councilman.
Can I ask a question also? These are the main providers of services.
Yes.
If we were to look at this as an answer to what we need during a snowstorm, we're going to be very short in terms of the services being available. Are we still going to engage local business, small business?
Yes, yes. We engage in amendment as well.
Is there any way we can get a list also of those folks that have accepted to participate?
No problem.
Can we get that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Thomas,
Yes, go right ahead.
is it my understanding that some of the city garbage trucks have now been outfitted with
Yes.
snowplow removers? I mean, the snow buckets.
Plows, yes. We have over 40 pieces of equipment that have been equipped with plows.
Okay, the reason why I'm asking that is because in the past, when we tried doing that, it didn't work. There was a delay in garbage being picked up, and also the snow plows broke down the truck because it's extra weight on the truck. So what are we going to do to avoid the mistakes of the past to not have that happen?
We only engage in the garbage trucks with the plows on them when we declare a state of emergency. Other than that, we won't put the plows on them. We get a certain amount of inches and we cancel garbage. That's when we strictly put the plows on the garbage trucks, and they'll help out on the longer routes.
Okay, and so what happened Friday after Thanksgiving? There was an inordinate amount of calls that we received in the Central Ward. I can't speak for anybody else's ward, that garbage did not get picked up throughout that weekend, and Monday was still a backlog. I know you were contacted by my office, and you dispatched several trucks to various areas in which the garbage had not been picked up. What broke down on that
On Monday?
day? On that Friday after Thanksgiving?
The Friday when we did the pickup for Friday, so we won't have a lot of garbage land for Monday. It was strictly supposed to go to Zone B. What happened was a lot of Zone A constituents, they put their garbage out. So we had to double back on Monday to make sure we get A and B. The initial plan was once they work overtime is to grab whatever's on the street. It don't matter if it's a Zone A or Zone B. We supposed to pick up everything. On Monday, the guys missed a few boxes. It was a layover crew, and I had the night crew come in, and so we could pick those boxes up before Tuesday.
Okay, you did a commendable job, but I just wanted to know, because should we be sending out information to people that if they're normally, the reason why people in Zone A put their garbage out was because it normally would be picked up on that Friday. And so the complaint was, why wasn't I told not to put my garbage out, especially after a holiday and everybody had Thanksgiving food and garbage, and so there was an inordinate amount of garbage that was put out. So is there something that we can do to communicate better with the residents?
Yeah, we go communicate with the communication department a couple of days earlier before we make the decision if we go work the day after the holiday. But the thing that happened Friday and Monday, that's the last time that it happened. We go out there on the day that is overtime, we grabbing the whole city. And if it's a missed pickup or if it's something that somebody put out late, that's the only thing we'll be leaving. I gave y'all a package through the city clerk on the 1st. It has the snow plan in it, and on the last page of the paper, it have a login, which is your city email, and the passcode is a temporary passcode. On that package, you can go in there now and actually see the garbage trucks that's out here running around now. So you'll be able to go in and click and see which garbage truck had the Central Ward, North Ward, East Ward, South Ward, and you'll be able to see the garbage trucks actually moving.
Yes, and again, I said you did an extremely great job in rectifying the issue, but in order to avert that going forward in the future, we need to make sure that the residents know not to put their garbage out so that they don't have the level of frustration that was communicated to my office.
Well, for the new year, we pick up, we go grab the whole city. so we won't have that problem going back into January. So
Okay.
if we activate an overtime after a holiday, we know we're gonna have double pickup. I'm gonna have crews out there from 6 in the morning to 11 at night, and we go grab the whole city. We may get some places late, but the whole intent is to grab the whole city instead of Zone A or Zone B.
Thank
So
you.
that's what we focusing on for the next overtime day.
Thank you for the clarity.
Madam President?
Yes, Councilman Ramos.
Yeah, going back, Director Thomas, to the snow removal vendors, what kind of guarantees does the city have that these vendors are not going to take on, multiple municipal contracts during the snowstorm and, get pulled from our city streets into other towns or areas?
Yes, we had a meeting Tuesday. We called them in Tuesday. We have them back in here Thursday to do a test run of the check-ins with their vehicles. And the message was pretty conveyed to them that if anybody, we put GPS on their vehicles. That's first and foremost. So the same GPS vehicles that y'all see now, which is the city, y'all be able to see the vendors too. And we plan on putting a laborer with the driver. So if something not done, or we had to call another vendor to get something done, that will surely come out of a payment towards them. We had asked them, we know they work for different municipalities, but when they here for North, that we expect them to be here strictly for us. So that's why we starting probably this weekend, start equipping with all the vehicles that they listed on the contract that they're giving us with GPS so we can monitor those as well.
Is any of this contract guaranteed, or is it based on an actual snow activity, them deploying trucks during a storm, or is any of this
Yes.
money guaranteed to them?
It's based on the snow. If something that falls beneath a certain amount of inches and we can handle it, we plan on going out there getting it ourselves. And when we need them, we go have them on standby. That's the part of the meeting on Thursday, where we go convey that message to them a little stronger, what we expect, how we expect them to respond, and the areas that we got them going in. That's also including that package that I left at y'all offices.
I haven't had a chance, and I apologize, because I know you sent the plan to each office, but in the past, we used to have pretty much vendors dedicated by ward. So I know in my case, the most effective cleanups were times when we had AOL or Lembo dedicated pretty much as a primary vendor in the North Ward. Is your department going back to that?
That process ain't changed. It's the
Okay.
same process.
So we know who to contact in case,
Yes,
obviously
yes.
we contact your office.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Everybody will be dedicated to wards in certain areas.
Any other comments, questions for Mr. Thomas? Thank you. Mr. Clerk, next item.
I didn't see that.
701D is a use of a state contract for the purchase of 10 vehicles.
Questions? Next item.
E is a use of a state contract for the purchase of 6 newer Ford cab chassis, dump trucks.
Questions, comments? Next item.
Yeah, Madam President,
Yes,
going back to
Councilman
to the police vehicles, I don't know if for the record they could just state the purpose. I know they're being purchased out of the SORA admin fund. Is this for
Yes.
street construction activities? Okay.
Thank you for reminding me. He and
Morning.
we did have a conversation prior, but it needs to
Morning.
be for the council as a whole.
How you doing, Lieutenant Santiago, North Police Department? Yes, these are for outside employment, for the construction. These are the small sedans.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that it?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
F is the use of a state contract for the purchase of Ford pickup trucks and 2 Chevy Silverados.
Next item, Mr. Clerk.
G is the termination of contracts SM 18218 and SM 19219, authorized by Resolution 7R1D of February 1st, 2017. This is the janitorial services contract.
Comments, questions? Next
Ken.
item.
This for,
Councilwoman Cheneyfield Jenkins.
is this for the City Hall?
Did you? Oh, I'm
I'm
sorry.
sorry, go ahead,
Councilman
Councilman
Amador.
Amador.
Can someone
And then
explain the reason why we're terminating this contract? And where was this located?
From my understanding, I think this not the city hall contract. This had nothing to do with it. It was one of the buildings that was always set aside for small minority women-based company. That was 1010 18th Avenue. And I think the bid, I can't answer. I think the bid didn't. They didn't bid on this, or they bid it. They wanted, then they didn't. They denied it. That's what I think the problem was with this. But I think this for 1010 18th Avenue. This not the contract for the whole city. It's just one building.
Anyone
I
else?
can confirm that.
The entity says Sierra House.
Yeah, I think that was the primary vendor for 1010 18th Avenue. That building right there has always been a different location that had a different vendor cleaning it. It wasn't a part of the actual rest of the city of public buildings.
That's the fire department
Yes,
building,
yes.
the headquarters.
They actually won the bid, then they denied it. They didn't want it no more. It was one of those cases.
So in this case, what we're doing is just canceling the contract.
Say it again?
What we're doing now is just canceling the
Cancel
contract.
From my understanding, yes.
Yes.
So who's going to be responsible for cleaning if they are not going to be the ones responsible for cleaning?
For right now, the fire department, they just put a schedule together, and we send United Services up there to clean certain days throughout the week. They go take care of the bathrooms, the garbage, and et cetera, probably about 3 or 4 times a week. That's what's going on up there now.
Any other questions?
So is there an intent to put a
Councilwoman?
bid back out for this?
Yes.
Thank you. Next item, Mr. Clerk.
H is the use of a state contract to purchase 3 Dodge Journey vehicles.
Next item.
Madam President,
I'm sorry.
it seems that we are creating a dealership.
Now,
It seems that we're doing what?
A dealership. We have purchased more cars than a dealership.
no, I think it goes a little beyond that.
We have money, so we have to spend it.
That's the point. That's what I've been trying to say for all these years.
Has anybody seen some
I
of
would
these
like to
water
see.
vehicles?
I would like to see.
They're like 30 years old, some of those cars that the water department uses. They
That
need
is-
vehicles.
But I would like to see how much money is available in these departments. You notice that buying these resolutions only come before us around December, which is at the end of the budget period. So there's got to be a surplus in those departments for them to buy these cars. Think about it. If there's a surplus in those departments, and if there's no real need, which is not the question here, I think that would be appropriate to transfer some of these monies into areas where we have some serious problems, like sweeping streets.
Any other comments behind that? Mr. Kelly?
As Councilman Ramos mentioned, some of the vehicles are ancient, and it costs us to repair these vehicles. So it's prudent to wait towards the end of the year when you know you're not going to need perhaps any additional chemicals, or you've completed the year without any additional emergency repairs, and now you can go out and buy these vehicles. Yes, we should be budgeting enough funds, and there is enough funds. Payment was more of an issue to the street sweeping contract. But I think purchasing these large items towards the end of the year is prudent when you know you've escaped any emergencies that may need to be done earlier in the year.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk, next item.
I is the use of a state contract to purchase above-ground fuel tanks installation removal.
Next item.
Moving right along.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Madam President, are we purchasing the fuel tanks, or are we getting rid of fuel tanks? What are we doing here?
Removal and repair.
Because it says purchase above-ground
Purchase.
fuel tanks.
By removing old ones and putting in new ones.
Yeah, Madam
Mr.
President.
Clerk, yes.
Yeah, the other thing I want to mention is you have three major purchases for the water sewer. You know, there should be
Yes.
somebody from that department here to answer questions.
And ordinarily, that doesn't happen. The director is almost always present, or someone who can respond. Are you able to respond to the councilman?
Somebody told me to call to my, I don't know what happened.
I'm sorry?
Oh, what happened?
He said he was instructed to come back to the mic because somebody asked him to come forward.
Yes, well, we have, we have $200,000 to purchase above-ground fuel tanks. And my question is, are we purchasing the tanks or are we removing tanks? Because normally what we do is we remove tanks.
I'll have to get back to you with that answer.
Mr. Kelly?
Mr.?
We'll provide the exact location, Council President. We are taking old tanks out of the ground, some of which have leaked, and replacing them with above-ground tanks. The exact locations of the tanks, I'm unaware, but they're both tanks that the Water Department uses in Public Works.
Okay.
Thank you. Others? Next item, Mr. Clerk.
7R2A is the authorizing resolution for the private sale and rehabilitation of properties for rental or for sale housing.
Next item.
B is a real property auction. This is the acceptance of bids from the executed quick claim deeds for property sold at the public auction on November 2nd, 2017.
I have a question on
Yes,
that, Madam
Councilwoman.
President. I saw Ms. Muhammad here. Maybe she can answer the question. The question I have is that in 2006, Judge Patricia Costello did an injunction on the sale of some properties because then citizen Cory Booker and some others had said that they didn't want the sales to go through, and those sales were halted. I'm getting complaints from some developers who have intact an ordinance that was voted on by the city council that gave them designation as having the property. And when Judge Costello released the sale of those properties to go forth, some of those properties are now being given to other developers. My question to you and Economic Housing and Development is, how is it that when the council, which has the authority to designate a developer and designate property, that those properties can then be given to someone else without the Economic Housing and Development or Real Properties coming back before the council and saying, we need you to de-designate this this developer, and now designate this new developer?
Okay. Annette Muhammad, Director of Redevelopment, Division of Property Management, Department of EHD. When the injunction took place, a lot of those redevelopment agreements were renegotiated. There were stipulations of settlement. Some of those developers have just walked away. Some of those developers just held on to till their redevelopment agreements. They didn't act on them. They're essentially in default of those agreements. If there was a settlement agreement whereby they had to pay more for the property or develop the property, whatever the terms of the agreement was, if they've defaulted on it or if they want to renegotiate it, they can do that. Just kind of, loosely. Recently, we had a developer come back in that had a stipulation of settlement from whereby there was an injunction on their redevelopment agreement, and they wanted to renegotiate the terms. So then it doesn't become as simply as to just designate those properties to let them go ahead and proceed if they want to lower the price for what they agreed to in the stipulation of settlement, or say, okay, I want these, I don't want these, can we swap these, and so on and so forth. And typically in our legislation, we don't go back to, it would be arduous to go back to council every time to de-designate someone. If the sale has been renegotiated to a different developer, there's a section in the resolutions that's standard for us that says any prior legislation designating these properties becomes null and void.
I'm speaking more specifically then about two developers who did not have a time frame that had expired and their properties were given away. One in particular was the property on Boyd Street in Springfield Avenue, in which the Boré Development Company, the property was voted on by the council. It was never told to us that there was an existing ordinance, no resolution that had designated them. And they did come back in after the fact when they found out, and they were told that, well, your time frame had expired, and it had not expired. So my question is, who made that decision to give that property away? And second of all, the other one is Lilac Development, Manny Rosa. There were several parcels of property that he was designated, and he was asked to pay $15 a square foot when no other developer has paid that amount. And so he challenged that. He spent over $80,000 in attorney fees to fight that, and he is now being told that his property was given away.
Okay, so we'll take Boré first. Boré, so that was one that we didn't realize that there was an executed redevelopment agreement on. We have since negotiated a release with Boré to let the other project go forward. So we essentially negotiated with them. They released their development rights because they weren't ready to proceed, and the other developer is ready to go. With the case of Mr. Rosa, he actually entered into agreement that he would pay additional fees, an additional cost for the property, but he didn't proceed with the development. He just kind of held on to it, and now he wants to proceed. And because he has a settlement agreement saying that he was going to pay the additional cost for the properties, that's not what he wants to do. So the existing settlement agreement that he entered into with the city as a result of the injunction, he wants to modify the terms for it.
Because he's saying that no other developer had paid $15 per square foot, and it was the previous administration that had imposed those terms.
So we do understand that, but like I said, we can't, because there is a stipulation of settlement that he agreed to, if he wants to renegotiate that, he can do that, and that's what we're currently working with him to do.
Okay, so the question is, how did we not know that the particular property for the Boré, you said we weren't aware of it. Is there something that has been put in place now?
Yes.
So that we'll know if something is, the terms of the executed contract has not expired, and therefore we gave away properties, and luckily they didn't challenge it.
And with all due respect to these agreements that were somehow executed and approved that had no time frame on them, while they didn't have a specific time frame, like we say 6 months, 18 months, 24 months, it did have a provision in it that they should be working toward the development, and he was doing absolutely nothing.
Okay.
So you have to, even though it didn't have a time frame, there was language in the redevelopment agreement said that he should be working towards the development.
Okay, so do we have something that makes it clearer now and give them a time frame so that there are none that go forward in the future that leaves it open-ended?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Councilman
President,
Ramos.
Yeah, I have a different question on the results of the public auction list. They gave us a few sheets. You know, I'm always curious about getting background on these LLCs that are purchasing property via city auction. And there's a few prominent ones that have purchased multiple properties. Can we get a breakdown of who are the registered partners of these LLCs?
Right. What I can do is I can provide you with a certificate of formation as well as the purchase agreement that would have the actual name on it.
There's a North Portfolio One LLC out of Roselle Park. They picked up multiple properties via the auction, and you know there are a few others, and we just don't have any background.
So that's
who they
common
are.
practice for individuals that come to the auction.
Yeah.
They will put the properties in an LLC, but I will provide you with the certificate of
Yeah,
formation.
before the vote tomorrow, please.
Certainly.
Okay.
Councilman James.
Ms. Muhammad, I've gotten your handout, and I appreciate you giving it to the entire council. Is there any way in the future we can get some kind of price on this?
So, yeah, I wanted to just get you the sales to kind of review what has gone before council. What I can also do is drop in the sales price and give you a breakdown of what those sales are. How many were actually sold, how many are actually in progress, how many are, pending closing and that sort of thing.
Okay, and secondly, if you can, how long these properties have been vacant or on our rolls and not occupied or not paying appropriate taxes? Just a background on properties that we sell.
Okay, so generally we do that as we're coming to council. Do you want me to do it for that list right there? That might be a little difficult to go back, because those the list that you have are property sales that have already come before council. What I was asked for was for a history of the sales. So those properties between January 2014 and November of 2017, those are all the sales that have been approved by council and where they are in the redevelopment process.
But when you come to council, is there some other document you give us that says
Typically, I
this
email
plot
you.
has been okay.
Yeah, what that background is on the property.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments?
I'm sorry, I know you said that it's going to take you some time to give us the background on this, which you presented us with, as far as the sale price is concerned. But can we get it at least before January?
Yeah, the sale price, for that list there, the sale price is easy to provide you with. It's just if I went to go back to do a background on it. Typically now, what we do is that we provide that background before you vote on it, but for that, it's just a matter of dropping the sale price in.
Can you give us the background?
On those sales?
Yes.
Yeah, Madam President, one other question.
That would be a whole project, but we could. I don't think that we could do that before January. Because some of them that were done in
February.
2014, it's hard to go back and give you what that background is. But we will.
He's offering you an alternative.
February.
Okay, by February, we'll kind of get you something.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilman Ramos.
Yeah, just real quick, Annette, in your assessment, how successful have the outcomes of these auctions been? You know, I could point to the ward, for example. There are some properties that have been sold over the last few years via the public auction process where you see some activity, and then you have a number of properties where you don't. And what measures you think, do you suggest we can undertake to strengthen that process to get better outcomes for the city?
So the auction is really a mixed bag of nuts. We have some people that come in and they'll get started right away, do what it is that they're supposed to do. Other properties, we have, our inspectors have to go along and push them along, threaten them with reverter action to kind of get them to move along. Also, when you have an auction property, they tend to put as little money as possible into the project just to get it back on the rolls and get it occupied, whereas when we sell them through redevelopment sales, we have a better completion rate and a better quality product when the property is rehabbed.
Can you require a larger amount of money as far as a deposit?
So yes, so as you see, At one point, we used to handle cash at the auction, and it became a problem with security and so on and so forth. So in speaking with the director, and, you know, Councilman Gonzalez also expressed the concern to put a mechanism in place that we get 10% of what the final bid is. Be it they, you know, come back in 24 hours, they have to provide certified funds and so forth. So that way we have more money up front and less willingness to walk away from the deal because the deposit is so small.
Thank you.
Yeah, Madam President,
Councilman
that has,
Gonzalez,
that
and
has
then
been my
Councilman
concern
McCallum.
all the time, that these individuals come and they put 10% of the original price that you listed the property for, but then that property sells for 10 times that price, and they don't adjust the deposit. So now they have 2% deposit or less, and if I don't, for any reason, I don't like the transaction, I get out of it, and I lose only 2% of my money, instead of being in the hook for 10% at least. I believe that it's imperative that we do that we allow them to come back the next day with the certified funds, indicating that this is the rest of the deposit, and that we have that in escrow so that we protect ourselves.
Correct. We will have that provision in place for our next sale.
Councilman McCallum.
Okay, question. You realize how many abandoned properties that we have in West Ward? And I'm constantly running into people, I think we had this discussion before, that the properties are designated. And I don't even understand it, so I can't answer them. How all the properties could be designated, and we have 1,000 vacant properties or abandoned properties. And I'm trying to find out, did you change the designation, the time frame for designation? What is the time frame?
So first, there's a couple of things. That there are thousands, a couple of thousand abandoned properties throughout the city. The misconception.
Most of them are in the West Ward.
The misconception of the general public is that they're city-owned, and so they may not be city-owned.
Oh.
So all the properties that were previously in our inventory, okay, when we have different sale mechanisms, be it a development sale, redevelopment sale, or auction, and we take those finite group of properties, because they're mostly land that we have and not actual structures, and we put them into different type of sale buckets. And so when we do a designation for a property, it's been moving forward. I think I mentioned to you before that the RFQ that we put out expires in this month, actually, and we'll be issuing another RFQ for developers to qualify so that they will have an opportunity to develop some of those properties. Also, for the new year, what we're going to also do is rev up our acquisition of abandoned properties, because there are so many, and the problem with the abandoned properties is that they're sitting in somebody's portfolio somewhere and they're just paying the taxes. So they're paying the taxes, so they're not coming up for foreclosure. And as you know, that's how the city gets their foreclosure. So we have to make an active effort to acquire those properties.
Okay, the city properties, who determines the designation? Who designates a small developer or an LLC?
So, the department does, really. So usually the Division of Property Management, in conjunction with EHD, will designate a developer if they have submitted their credentials for our RFQ and so forth. So we try to make the process open.
But you realize that they're land banking and not flipping the properties. Then I'm talking to larger developers who are being offered these properties by smaller developers after they sat on the property for an amount of time.
So
I spoke to a developer last night, and he said that he's been constantly offered properties where the small developer has been designated. They don't develop the property, then sell it to a larger.
So there are, I've known of a case or two where someone has been shopping their designation. There's no way to do that. Once you receive a designation from us, and the sale comes to council, the council approves the sale, we have our inspector go out to make sure that they are actually working on these projects. If you look at the list that I provided you, those type of sales for the smaller redevelopers that submitted through the RFQ, those are listed under the redevelopment. I broke them down between auction, redevelopment, development, and so they're actively, you'll see that they're in progress, they're working on them, and we do check.
What's the time frame for the development designation? Is it 6 months or a year or 2 years?
So they have 12 months from the time they close with the city to rehab the property.
Can we have a listing, because I appreciate the fact that you state that it's not able to be done, but we know it's being done.
Yeah, we know it's being
Okay.
done.
So could you please give us a list, and I'm also making this request from EHD, of any properties that have been designated and the 18 months or the 12 months have expired?
So the designations, excuse me, ma'am, the designation doesn't last for 12 months or 18 months. The designation just allows us to, first of all, we don't have to accept your proposal. Okay, so what generally happens is someone expresses some interest in the property, we may designate it, you have to provide us with certain information and so on and so forth. If it proceeds to council, once council approves it and then they close on it, that's when their clock comes into play to actually rehab the property and do what it is that they said that they were going to do. A preliminary designation may only last 30, 60, 90 days, and that's just for you to get your project together so that we can review it.
I'm talking about those that have been voted on by council, have been designated, and work has not begun on them as of yet.
Okay. So that's in there, but I will break it out for you.
Good.
Thank you.
I have also a quick question. I have 2 properties, 10th Street and Central Avenue, and then the other project with the Amari brothers on 10th Street where the old halfway house was. And they're not being done.
So the Amari brothers have come to council. They have not closed yet. Their contract just recently was executed. I believe they're preparing to close. Shortly, they reached out to my office. They hadn't closed because they were getting their financing. They were applying for financing. And so you have to have your financing in place
Well, they got
before
$1
you
million
close.
from the city.
I see Mr. Cologne here.
Julio Colon, Director of Housing. The reason they haven't closed yet is because we're waiting to close on the PSE&G bond, which $1 million is going towards the project. They already have their HMFA financing commitment, and they have their banking commitment and Federal Home Loan Bank money. So they're just waiting. HMFA is just waiting for us to provide our funds so that they can close.
Okay, let me say this also, that they have an agreement with the other department, right? So now Integrity House is involved in the project. Are you aware of that?
I'm sorry?
Are you aware that they're involved with Integrity House now? So I don't know what the project has evolved into.
Well, it's special needs housing, so they would take on a partner like that because they're going to provide social services to the tenants that are going to be there. So that would make sense for them to be involved with Integrity House.
Okay.
As far as the other project, I think is it 11th and Central?
On the corner of 10th and Central, 23 units affordable housing that sits right on the corner. I don't recall the address right now.
Okay, that wasn't through our office. That wasn't through a city transaction.
Well,
That's sitting in front
we
of-
voted on it here at the council.
That's sitting in front of the Amari Brothers project?
Right, on the corner.
Old brown building is
Yeah,
here.
that particular project received financing from NJRA and private banking financing. So, I'm sorry. So that we're monitoring that because NJRA has asked us to monitor the project for them, but as far as financing from our end, there is no financing, although there is a tax abatement that was approved for that particular project, and if they don't proceed soon with the construction of that tax abatement can go into default.
Okay, thanks.
Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, Mr. Clerk.
7R,
That was a good discussion.
7R2C is a private sale and redevelopment to rehabilitate property to extend the local community daycare center. Madam President, I'd like to go back to 7R2B for a moment. I note
You're going back to
7R2B.
on the top of page
2B,
14.
yes.
I just want to note to the council that this item failed to adopt at the last council meeting, and if it fails at tomorrow's meeting, then all of these sales will be voided.
Thank you for the information.
7R3A is a application acceptance of grant funds for street resurfacing. 3B is a deletion of a bus stop. 3C is a waiver of the 20-day waiting period. This is a companion to 7R6PSNF-A on page 3 of the agenda.
Mr. Clerk, do we have a reason for the deletion of the bus stop?
We'd have to pull the file to look
Jack?
at that.
Well, engineering, traffic is here.
Morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good you.
Say my name right. I'm Kimberly Singleton, the manager of traffic and signals. The reason for the deletion of the bus stop is because.
Could you speak into the mic?
Sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
And can you start all over again for those who
All
are
right.
not able to hear?
I'm Kimberly Singleton, the manager of traffic and signals. The reason for the deletion of the bus stop, New Jersey Transit had requested to delete the bus stop and move it somewhere else. So we just put in a resolution for them. They're going to relocate it down the street.
Down the street, which way, on Lyons or?
On Lyons, I believe to the left, because they wanted to place it in front of a church, and that's not appropriate. So we asked them to go up one block.
Okay, in the future, can we have the new location so that we can put that information out to the public?
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
All right.
Just one more question. Is it possible to get an answer as to when those streets that were not paved this year, that were on the list to be paved, but they were not paved, when they're going to be done?
The list for?
The list of the streets to be paved. They were supposed to be paved this year.
For a city contract or PSNG?
City contract.
Okay.
That we already approved.
Right.
And they were supposed to be paved this year, but they were not. Is it possible to know when they're going to be paved?
They're going to be paved actually in the next season. We're going to pave the funding for this year and next year. We're going to pave it actually March the 29th. That's the beginning of the next paving season. The plant's closed in the next week, so we won't be able to get hot asphalt.
But you still have a list of streets that
I still
were
have the
not
same
paved?
list. Yes.
Okay. But
And this is the new list that we're going to do
right,
this
that has
list.
nothing,
and
that
the
has
last
nothing
list.
to do with this list.
Right. This list and the last list is going to be paid. Actually, we started the last list. We started doing the concrete work because we wanted to do the sidewalk, the curb. But we're going to pave actually in the spring. We actually started the contract. We just haven't started paving because the asphalt during this weather it's not going to stand up.
Okay.
Councilman James.
Okay, in that same line, do you have the current list of speed bumps?
Yes, I do.
Okay, could you please send that through the clerk to my council colleagues and myself?
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
Last night, I had the opportunity to drive up the back of, or the beginning of Avon Avenue. I'm convinced I was someplace else. It was as smooth as ice. So I want to thank you.
Yeah, I know
Hopefully
you
the
requested
pastors
that
will
for some time.
stop calling me and the residents. Thank you.
You're welcome. I know you requested that for some time.
I also wanted to thank you for Avon Avenue.
Oh, yes.
Because it was like driving on the moon, going into craters. But can you just give us a consolidated list of the proposed streets and those that, as Councilman Amador referred to, referenced earlier, that are still slated to be paved and have not as of yet.
Yeah. So those streets were started in March. We're just doing the concrete work, so you may see us out there working, doing the curbs in different ward areas, because right now we can put the work in, but they're going to start up the beginning of spring.
So if you could just give us a refresh coordinated list so that we
It's-
can share that with the
It's
community.
about 30 streets. I have it to you
Right.
guys.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Thank you, Ms. Phillips.
Okay.
Next item, Mr. Clerk.
7R5A is the acceptance of funds, grant funds. This is the immunization grant. 7R6A, B, C, and D, we will discuss with Corporation Counsel in executive session. 8A is the establishment of the municipal meeting dates. That's the calendar that we've distributed to you. 8B is the establishment of the municipal paid holidays.
Next item.
8C is the attesting to the municipal council's review of the city audit. After adoption of this resolution, we will have the annual letter to distribute to the council to sign off for the Department of Community Affairs. 8D is a ceremonial street dedication. 8E is a ceremonial street dedication. 8F are various profound sorrow and regrets. G are various commending, recognizing, and commending resolutions. 9A is the appointment of 90 Class 2 special police officers. These are residents.
Clerk, did we check this
Yes,
against that
I was
list
calling on you.
from last year?
No, we haven't. These are
These are the
residents.
ones
Some
that-
of these may be new people. There's no
There's no
limit
yeah.
on the residents.
Yeah, okay, no, but we want to make sure that all the ones that are here were, well, we may have some, as you indicated, we may have some new people, and those new people, I suppose, are sworn in to tell the truth. So,
If you like, Councilman, we will do a comparison for you by tomorrow's meeting.
I believe that we should have some sort of ceremony where they actually swear that they are telling the truth about the address.
Why? You had the guy from
We have so many
Kelly
who
who
don't.
swore in front of the FBI and he lied. So what does that mean?
Well, precisely that. They
That's
say if
the
if they do lie,
That's right.
then they can be prosecuted.
Kelly.
Absolutely.
Flynn.
Flynn, not Kelly.
Flynn, I'm
Kelly's
sorry.
Next item, I heard that, Councilman. Next, Quintana.
look alike.
Next item, Mr. Clerk.
8A is an ordinance amending section 23:5-14E, parking by permit only. This would add Polk Street between Lafayette Street and Clover Street to the existing permit parking areas designated list.
Next item.
B would add the west side of Delavan Place between Delavan Avenue and its southerly terminus to the existing permit parking areas designated list.
Yes, Councilman Ramos.
I would ask the council to consider supporting B and C for advancement and adoption. We had a speaker 3 meetings ago from Delavan Avenue who had requested that this area be designated for permit parking and that we also restrict parking to one side of the street. So this is a small block off of Broadway.
So noted. Mr. Clerk.
8C would add the east side of Delavan Place between Delavan Avenue and its southerly terminus to the parking prohibited at all times list.
Same request.
Yeah, B and C, advance and adopt.
On first, yes, sir. Eight D is the granting of 5-year tax abatement to the real property located at 513 Fifth Street. E is the granting of 5-year tax abatement to the residential property located at 54 Kasuth Street.
Next item.
F is a 5-year tax abatement for the residential properties located at 157-159 Bel Air Place.
Next item.
G is a 5-year tax abatement to the residential property located at 16-18 Edmonds Place.
Sponsor.
Is there a second? Second, Councilman Osborne. Excuse me. Next item, Mr. Clerk.
H is a 5-year tax abatement for the residential property located at 106 Fifth Street. I is a...
Is there a second to the sponsorship?
A second.
Seconded by Councilman Gonzalez. Next item, Mr. Clerk.
I is a 5-year tax abatement to the residential property located at 143 Bel Air Place. J is a 5-year tax abatement for the residential property located at 20 Vanderpool Street.
Sponsor.
Second. Next item.
K is a ordinance of providing for the special emergency appropriation of $10 million for the payment of contractual required severance liabilities resulting from the layoff of retirement of city employees.
Question.
Councilwoman
What exactly
Jenkins.
is this? Can you explain
Clerk?
exactly what this is?
Mr. Kelly?
Sure, Council President, there is a list attached to the ordinance which I could email to all of the council members this afternoon as a refresher. This is pursuant to contract. There is a provision in the uniform contracts that uniformed officers earn 3 terminal leave days every year they're on the force. With number of retirees that we have this year, the city is paying an inordinate amount of money in terminal leave pay. State statute allows us to stretch these payments over a 5-year period, so that's what we are looking to do. We've done it previously. We did not do it last year, but we did it the previous year. So we are looking to take the terminal leave payments that total approximately $10 million and stretch those payments out over the next 5 years.
So exactly what does that mean? So if somebody has retired on their terminal leave, they're, instead of getting a certain amount, so we'll stretch it out over 5 years. So maybe if they're getting 500, it'll go down to maybe 250 over a period of time?
No, their payments will be paid to them pursuant to contract. They could get it as a lump sum, or they can get it paid over a multiple year period pursuant to their contract. It's their choice. It just allows the city to finance it over a period of time. Fortunately, we have the cash flow where we won't need to borrow funds to finance it, but it just gives the city a mechanism to finance it over a period. But their payments will remain pursuant to contract.
Okay, and so this is a time to ask, what are we still doing about this health insurance? Well, this health insurance stuff is still a nightmare for not just the retirees, but those of us who still work for the city of Newark. We have not come to a resolution that is adequate to accommodate everyone.
Well, Councilwoman, there have been fewer and fewer problems. I mean, with approximately 2,600 retirees and retirees where the city does not maintain their addresses of retirees. Only yesterday was there a retiree that never completed their paperwork, and then they didn't have the eligible quarters in Medicare, an individual who was 92 years old. But we accommodated that individual through a company called MagnaCare that will be on the agenda next meeting for any individual who may not have been eligible for the state health benefits plan, primarily because they didn't have the requisite quarters in Medicare. Years ago, there was no requirement for people to pay into Medicare for uniformed officers. So when you get these elderly seniors, they don't necessarily have the Medicare quarters, and the city is using MagnaCare as our third-party administrator to adjudicate claims, and the city would pay for that on a self-insured basis. So currently, there's approximately 36 retirees that are enrolled in the MagnaCare program. For the balance of retirees regarding prescription, as you know, That contract actually, again, I mentioned previously, will be before council next meeting. The city will self-insure for retiree RX on January 1 through a company called Navitus. And Navitus, this is the state is allowing all the retirees to pull out of the state health benefits plan for prescription coverage, and we'll be able to match our co-pays to the contracts where those retirees enjoyed when they retired. So if there was a 015 copay or $5.10 copay, those copays will remain as of January 1st pursuant to whatever contract they retired under. The state is allowing us to do that as long as our program is a
You just turned Jack's mic off. Mildred, you just turned Jack's mic off.
Oh, I'm sorry. I will be honest. Let me be transparent. I was just saying to Councilman McCallum, during this difficult time transition where there are issues with the insurance, and I just said to him, you know, a few weeks ago I was saying, nah, I retired from the state of New Jersey. I'm so grateful that I escaped this tsunami that's taking place. I got a letter last week saying, dear Mrs. Crump, your insurance has been reduced. And so I now actually really know. I sympathized in the past. Now I understand, what is the expression, more clearly, how devastated so many of our employees who are affected by this.
Absolutely, and there are a number of retirees who obviously, because of the health conditions, their competency level was diminished. The state itself is moving from their pharmacy benefit manager previously was Express Scripts, and as of January 1, the state is also changing to a company called Optum. So anyone who may have been retired through the state is now having their RX changed as well. So on January 1, our retirees will be issued a card by Navitus. Navitus will be our pharmacy benefit manager. The city plan will be self-insured, and those retirees will enjoy the same co-pays they did when they originally retired.
Oh, wait a minute, excuse me, I'm not finished, Councilman. I want to say that as a person who is not covered under a contract, as an employee currently, I have seen an increase in what I'm responsible to pay for as far as Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield. And I know that there are other employees who are suffering the same thing. Our bills are going up. What we're responsible for is going up, and less is being covered. And I spoke to Ms. Daniels in regards to the fact that, number one, I was told by her as well as Blue Cross Blue Shield, the physical therapy that I was receiving for my sciatic nerve was going to be covered by a particular physical therapist. And I went to them, and out of a balance of $2,249, Blue Cross Blue Shield only paid $109. So now I'm responsible for the balance of that. And that was after I was told by Blue Cross and Blue Shield I could go there. That was after I was told by Ms. Daniels I could go there. And so I subsequently have had to stop going for the physical therapy because I can't afford the additional monies. And I'm not the only one in that boat. And again, I will ask, when are we going to stop this? When are we going to come to a conclusion where this makes everybody whole? Because on January 5th, you and the mayor represented, and on January 10th, you represented that we were going to have insurance that was going to be equal to or better than what we had. And I definitely don't have that right now. And this is just from the physical therapist. I mean, they sent me a check, and I couldn't understand it. And I said to Ms. Daniels, I don't know of any physician's office that you go to in which they don't give you that form where you assign benefits. because they want their money up front. So I always sign that letter saying that form saying I assign the benefits. So why is Blue Cross Blue Shield sending me a check for $109? But more importantly, why are they neglecting to pay the $2,249.80 that was approved allegedly on the phone by them, that I was going to receive coverage to go to this physical therapist? And so I'm not the only person who's going through this, Jack. There are still employees and retirees who have seen an increase of what they have to put out of pocket in order to have health care.
Well, the plan that the city was in, the Blue Cross Blue Shield Direct Access Plan, is virtually identical to the plan that is offered by the state. Your specific instance, I'm unfamiliar with. I will help adjudicate that. Perhaps that one provider was not in the network and wasn't in the network previously. I don't know. I don't want to make excuses.
But I was told by Blue Cross and Blue Shield, and I was told by Ms. Daniels, when my doctor said who I had to go to, I called. And I called Blue Cross and Blue Shield. And I said, is this physical therapist allowed? And they said yes. And then I get slapped with a $2,249 bill. And I'm telling you, there's other people who are going to be coming forward and saying that they're facing the same issues.
Councilwoman, whenever that happens, we assist them in adjudicating the claims. And quite honestly, right now, I'm unfamiliar with any outstanding issues that we have. I'm coincidentally meeting with two representatives from Horizon at 1:30 today. I would love to understand the issues so I can have them assist me in adjudicating your specific claim.
Okay, and I'm not worrying about just me. I'm saying that I can't speak for any other council person, but I find it hard to believe that I'm the only one who's still getting phone calls. I'm the only one still getting approached by people in the street. I'm the only person that's getting approached by current employees as well as retirees that are saying that this nightmare is still continuing.
It's right in the middle of it.
We have adjudicated any claims that have come to us. There has been confusion among retirees, of course, thinking that they have a prescription card that is valid, but they've never completed the enrollment process, of which when that occurs, and just recently as Sunday evening I received a text message, I was made sure that that individual had an ID number by Monday morning. So when they come to us, we're doing our best to assist in making sure that everyone has that coverage. Your instance, again, I'm by coincidence meeting with Horizon at 1:30 today. I would love them to provide me an answer.
Absolutely, because I used to pay for traditional. I was in the traditional plan. And so I had physical therapy back in 2014,
Sure.
but
And if they advise
2015.
you and if they advise you this provider was in network, I don't know why now that you're only getting a fraction of the claim paid.
That's
So-
not even a fraction. That's a tip.
Madam President.
Yes, Councilman, Mr. Kelly.
Yeah, I just want to state that you're not the only one that's received calls. We've received about 14 calls, all retirees. You know, our office has forwarded that information over to Jack and to Ms. Daniels for follow-up. The last call we received was about 2.5 weeks ago. So, you know, we too have received our share of calls, mostly from retirees, and you know, to personnel's credit, they have followed through with a number of them. I haven't heard from someone in about 2.5 weeks, so I guess that's good news on that front. But just a quick question on the list of employees that are listed, that are attached to the ordinance where we're borrowing money to pay. Have those payments been issued, or via this action by the council will payments be issued? I know there's an old settlement from the SOA which lists a number of employees that the city does owe money to. So what happens after we approve?
Some have been paid and some have yet to be paid. I could refine that list to identify.
Could you just give us a separation date on the list of employees that are connected to the actual action, but it doesn't state whether or not they were paid the monies owed to them. So can you add that information?
Absolutely. We can have that provided by tomorrow.
Thank you.
Councilman McCallum, also,
Jack,
I'm sorry,
Jack,
also
this
has
is
a
almost a
question.
year in, and we're right in the middle of it. I don't see any improvement. My mother's a retiree, and I'm an employee, and I dropped family and went to single, but I'm paying a whole lot more. I get doctor bills, and I should be paying less paying single. Why am I paying? I'm paying, I spoke to Keisha Daniels about it. I'm paying probably 30% more, and I went down to single. So I'm not getting it. And I can't be the only employee, so it has to be that a lot of employees are owed money from this health plan. I just don't see what you're doing about it. It's almost a year in, January, I think we voted on it. And it's a debacle. And, we've been blowing smoke constantly for the last year. Everything that you said to us didn't happen. It's still not happening. And here you are again. I want to know when we're going to get the employees to get reimbursed their money, and it's not equal or better than the previous plan. As the councilwoman just stated, she's getting bills. I get bills. You almost be scared, afraid to go to the doctor because you don't know what bill you're going to get that they didn't pay. And you're telling us that it's equal or better. Come on. I mean, this has been going on for the last year. You've been blowing smoke up our behinds, man. I would advise you guys to get it together. Everything you say is always some smoke. It never happens. And this is over and over again. And I'm personally fed up with it.
Yeah, Councilman, I have sworn statements from Horizon that the plans are equal. Regarding the prescription, we are reimbursing all retirees every week for the difference in copay, and as January 1st will be issued, will mirror whatever labor agreement that they retired under. So if there are individual circumstances, I would, again, be more than happy to assist. Personnel is doing it every day, as is an individual in my office when questions arise. So if you have a specific bill you would like us to review and advocate on your behalf, please stop by the office.
Madam President, a quick question.
Yes, I continue.
Jack, you mentioned that the officers are paid 3 days. Is that annually?
I'm sorry, the question is?
3 days a year for every employee that retires? Is that the payment that we're making?
The payment that...
The $10 million is for...
The lump sum payments that are due those employees. And I will provide...
But that's for 3 days yearly or 3 days when they retire? How much is it that we're paying?
I'll confirm what those balances are this afternoon in email everyone to make sure that they are either the total payment or the payment that is due this period under their choice of lump sum or...
But my question is very simple. Let's say when you start working with the police department, let's say, and you accumulate 3 days every year.
Yes.
When you get to retire, then you get paid, let's say, the 75, 90 days at that time.
That's correct.
So, again, this is something that I have said before. We have the technical expertise and knowledge now that allows us to accumulate the actual amount due every year. Let's say 3 days at $30,000 is not the same as 3 days at $90,000 or $100,000. So why is it that we have to pay, let's say, at the end of the career of someone for the time that that individual has accumulated at different salaries? That, unless that has been negotiated, I don't see why we do that.
So your suggestion is if they're accruing these 3 terminal leave days, call it something else other than 3 terminal leave days and pay that obligation at that point in time? That's one way of doing it.
So, Mr. Kelly, as a result of the concerns expressed by council members and people that I see sitting in the chambers on this morning, someone owes not just the elected officials, but someone owes the retirees and those who are being impacted by the decision in terms of insurance. I'm with Councilman McCollum and Councilwoman Chaneyfield Jenkins. I can't go shopping without someone stopping me in the supermarket to ask me. I would love for you to travel with me one day when I go to the supermarket. We're the ones who are exposed to the outrage and what's going on. So we need an honest answer. This is the end of the year. And we were promised, or our employees were promised that this would be something that would make life better. Unfortunately, it's not.
We were not only
Council
promised, Mr.
President,
Kelly, just a minute. We were not only promised that the insurance was going to be equal or better. We were promised that there was going to be a cost saving. We were promised that no one was going to receive any harm. And it was $14 million that was supposed to be saved, and that was never a true number, because the $14 million just meant you split the $28 million net, and you put 14 into next year's budget, so the taxes didn't go up. So that was a shell game in the first place. But more importantly, the issue is there are people who are still hurting. There are people who are still not being treated. There are still people who are not being able to pay and receive their medical insurance in the manner that it was prior to this disruption of the services going to the state health plan. And it's not just me, and it's not just the fact that I have an issue. I'm saying this council, this administration, has a responsibility to resolve this issue before December 31st. We owe it to the people who have sacrificed, and all of them don't live out of the city of Newark. And even if they did, so what? They gave their time and their service, and they were employees, and we owe them that much. And the employees that are here now, that are receiving larger bills than they had in the past, we have to come to a conclusion. Either the conclusion on December 31st is we have resolved all the outstanding problems, or the conclusion is, so what, go jump in the lake because we don't care. Now, I'm not in that category, because I've been talking about this from day one. There's been a problem. I said it was going to be a problem. It is a problem. It still remains a problem.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly.
Yeah. I would love the names of those people that you suggest are still having problems. We meet with the unions whenever there is an issue, and I'd like them to stop by perhaps at the next council meeting so they can explain some of the extra efforts that the city has gone through to assist their members and retirees.
They're here today. I'm
if
sure.
you have the names of any of those retirees that still have issues, I'd love to talk.
Yeah, one of them is coming tomorrow. Former Councilman Hector Cachado.
I'm sorry, his name is, or her name?
The former councilman of the North Ward, Hector Cachado. He's coming in regards to his. Okay. We have Mr. Padillo. His son is going to come tomorrow and, to speak about the $400 and some odd thousand of health insurance bills that they have because the father is terminal and they haven't been paid.
Okay.
So there'll be people who will be coming here to
Okay.
speak.
Have they stopped?
Absolutely. They've spoken to Ms. Daniels.
Okay.
They've spoken to the insurance carrier themselves. And the issue is it's not resolved.
All of these issues may be resolved. I'm unfamiliar with both individuals that you referenced. I'll ask Ms. Daniels, and I'll have my own report for you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Councilman McCallum has one final comment.
Well, I
Mr.
just
Kelly.
want to say, really, the whole thing has been an embarrassment. And I want to apologize to any of the employees or retirees who's this has affected. The people who were in the hospital who found out they didn't have insurance benefits while they were in the hospital. You know, it's been an emotional thing for us, and we hear the stories all the time. Police officers have called me crying. They need to have an operation that they couldn't have because it was not going to be covered. And here we are a year later, and we're still hearing the same things we heard in January.
Thank you. I think you've responded. Mr. Clerk. Help him out, Ren.
8L is an ordinance amending section 23:5-14E, parking by permit only. This would add Crane Street between Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard and Summer Avenue to the existing permit parking areas designated list.
Moving on first reading, adopt on first reading, please. This was requested by the residents.
Second. Can we also move and adopt on first 8A?
I second that.
Communications.
Next item, Mr. Clerk.
Just one moment, Madam President. 8A, Clover Street?
Polk Street.
Clover Street? Okay. Clover.
Polk. First one.
It's 8A.
Oh, it's both. Okay, Polk and Clover. Okay.
On 8K, let's move and adopt that on first reading.
Okay. The Finance Department. Okay.
Are you seconding that, Councilman Ramos? The one on the
$10 million bond?
for the retired police.
Who moved it?
I just did.
I'll second it then.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Okay, we have discussed the judge's appointment. As you can see, we have a full load we have 14 speakers, and there will be 2 added speakers for the speakers list tomorrow.
We have 17.
We have 17. Oh, yes, we have 17, and there will be two added at the meeting tomorrow.
Are there any added starters coming?
There are 2 added starters that are in the system attempting to arrive on the agenda. The first is authorizing the mayor designated deputy mayor to execute a lease agreement with the Newark Community Economic Development Corporation for the lease of property. The other is economic development, construction of Mulberry Commons. This is for a $9.9 million funding for the Flanagan Corporation Contracting Group. But as I say, they are in Legistar, and I'm not certain that one of them is going to make it.
I do believe we'll have the information. Mr. Clerk, public hearing now.
Yes, we'll let's do the public hearing speaking before we go into executive session. This is a 30-minute period in which speakers will be given 3 minutes to speak. When you step to the microphone, please state your name and address for the record. You will see a small timing device on the podium in front of you, which will begin counting down your time when you begin speaking. When you reach the 2-minute mark, the yellow light will illuminate, indicating that you have 1 minute remaining for summation. When you reach your 3rd minute, the red light will illuminate, and there will be an audible sound. Please look forward, speak into the microphone. We are recording these proceedings, and if you turn to speak to the audience, we may miss part of your statement. Please address all questions to the chair and not to individual council members. Is there anyone present that wishes to speak at this time?
Before we go to public speaking, Madam President, with all the money that we have spent on the information systems in this city, why are we still sending letters to everyone on the tax rolls, regardless of having or not having an outstanding amount at the end of the year? Every taxpayer received a letter indicating that if you owe, or if you owe any money, why can't we, with all the money that we have spent, why don't we have the ability to go into the system and identify only those who owe money and send them a letter, instead of everyone getting a letter and getting all kinds of confusion going on?
Mr. Clerk.
It seems unreal that here we are in 2018 and we still haven't.
I happen to agree with you, but Mr. Clerk, so that we can put this on the record, a letter to the tax collector and Mr. Kelly and the other appropriate persons, administrators, with the councilman's question. It really does make more sense. Councilwoman.
I'm sorry, just because Jack is standing near some union people, I just want to make sure, Mr. Kelly, you made the statement that you would like to talk to the unions. Have you negotiated or spoken to the unions about the lump sum payments for this $10 million thing we're doing? Because it says to pay upon, the person leaving. So would you make sure that you speak with the union representatives and make sure that a payment upon separation is enacted?
Yes, I will, Councilwoman.
Thank you.
Mr. Clerk?
Is there anyone that wishes to speak?
Good morning. Manira El-Bumani, a citizen of Newark. First, I want to ask the question, who's the redevelopment agent for the city? Is it truly the Newark Housing Authority Director?
Ms. Bhavani, I'm going to make a suggestion. So why don't you complete your statement and put your question at the end?
That's better. So who's the Newark redevelopment agent? And also on the sideline, she said that she will be sending me my OPA request that was dated since 9/19/17, a list of all city-owned properties that have been sold from 2014 to present. So before, I was going to say that request is like, 2 months? I was ready to get the council people or somebody to fill this denial of access complaint, because I shouldn't be signing it or filling it out, because I'm I'm the one being denied. But anyway, also Rutgers did a study on equitable development, and I've been coming to this council talking about the need for affordable housing task force. So the council, you need to look at this recommendation. Is a study on equitable housing that Rutgers did, and also through this recommendation, they requested equitable housing advisory council. So it behooves the council now to review this recommendation and also submit your requests for people who you want to serve on this council, because it's now in formation, and also give your input. The next thing is the diversity of city contracts. Now, that's still a major issue in the city. So Jersey City came up with a plan. I want to forward that information to you, because we still aren't there yet. We're getting local contractors and getting procurement for local businesses here, so that's still a major issue. I put a request in with the Council of North Ward for illegal dumping on 6 Oriental Place, and it's still piling up, the illegal dumping. So I just want you to be on notice about that. Your requests to the engineer department have not been fulfilled yet. I came here several times about the crime. The crime in the city is out of control, and we all know that. And women right now is the higher number that's being murdered in the city and attacked, carjacking, murders, and what happened to the sister who's been advocating against violence is heartbreaking. So I came before you one time to
Thank you, Ms. Mamani. Your time has expired. I will ask the clerk. I will ask the
I'm gonna close with this, please.
Excuse me. I will ask the acting clerk if he will get from you the
Are you
question
against
that you raised. Your time has
safety
expired.
or not? I'm just going to close with this.
Your time has expired. Mr. Clerk, is there anyone else who wishes to speak?
Excuse me.
No one else. I'm sorry. Let her sit down.
I just want to ask.
Ms. Mamani, your time has expired. There's someone waiting to speak. No, her question, it's not for you. I asked the clerk to speak to you about the question you raised at the beginning of the meeting, and we will do that. So for the record, but at this time, your time has expired.
Munira, I want my aide to get a copy of that Rutgers report. Or if it's got a web link to it, she's going to come up right now. Lanice, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Mamani. Ms. Mamani.
I'm going to have y'all get a copy.
Thank you very much. Councilwoman.
No, you can let Ms.
Okay. We'll hear from the police union.
Madam
Sorry,
President,
Councilman Amador.
I don't have a comment about what was said before, but I totally sympathize with the fact that Ms. Pomani is not getting the information that she requested back in September. I'm a member of the council. I haven't gotten the information that I requested about 2 months ago on the monies that the city has spent on festivals. For some reason, I got half of the information. The cost and the payments were not there. What do I have to do to get that information? I would like to know how much the city is spending on festivals and who owes to the city. It's a simple question.
That's right there.
Thank you. Next speaker.
The speaker is off.
Yeah.
Hello?
There
Good
we go.
afternoon, Madam President, Council. John Crystal from the Newark
Good
Police
afternoon.
Superior Officers Association, 1 Lincoln Avenue, Newark, New Jersey, Suite 300. Last time I appeared before you was when the council was appropriating funding for legal fees for city officials in regards to civil suits that were filed. I brought up the attention that we had one matter. One of our members was being also sued, and the city refused to provide legal representation. An arbitration decision at that time came out, said the city was obligated to provide legal representation. You advised the head of the Corporation Council to speak with me in the hallway regarding this. We met in the hallway, said they agreed they were going to pay the legal fees for Lieutenant Joe Pereira. But now I get an information from the city that they're moving to vacate the arbiter's award, and they don't want to pay the legal fees for Lieutenant Pereira. Now, you know, it's just a matter of not when, but when this is going to happen. Someone's going to get sued. I mean, you appropriated funding for the high-ranking city officials. You gave I think you gave Michael Critchley appropriating funding, and all we're asking for, the same thing for our members, is to appropriate funding for this member. We have an Arbiter's Award. I mean, I presume we're going to be successful if they have to go to court, but you're just wasting the taxpayers' money, and you're just going to pay legal fees to these other attorneys. So all I'm suggesting is maybe Mr. Kenyatta doesn't know what Ms. Francis is doing, and I'd like to speak with him in regards to this. I sent an email, and I'd just like his legal fees to be paid. If you're going to pay the mayor and everybody else legal fees, you can pay his legal fees too. And I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Councilwoman?
Mr. Stewart, when the issue was brought up, you did say that you were going to take care of it. Can you please, because obviously Ms. Francis has not made you aware of it, we did, I know I got the impression that you were going to handle it with the SOA or the officer and take care of his legal fees, because as you said, the mediator is going to make us pay it anyway. And so why make them sue in order to get it paid? So.
Can I ask a simple question? What was
Disposition of the case.
what was the reason for the suit, the lawsuit,
It was alleged sexual harassment.
within the department?
Yes. Denying all the claims. And we had a meeting with the mediator in regard to this, and they were taking Lieutenant Pereira out of the suit and just going after the city. So there's not going to be any more legal fees. You're just going to have to pay legal fees to go to court.
I think so, too.
So
Excuse me,
it's sexual
Councilman.
harassment within the
Hey,
department.
Councilman.
Yes.
Corp Counsel, are we getting awfully close to something that should be discussed in executive session?
Good afternoon, Kenyatta Stewart, City of Newark Law Department. Councilwoman, you are right. We should discuss this in executive session.
Which we are going to have
There
in a
is
few
a
minutes.
very fine piece of this that I want to discuss with you all, just because of the actual charge itself may make it a little different. I did have some discussions with the young lady in my office that's handling it, but I give you more details in executive session.
So this discussion will take place under security. Is there anyone else who wishes? I'm sorry, Mr. Clerk, I don't want to take your job.
Are there any additional speakers?
Yes.
Oh, Councilwoman.
Me.
Speak.
Yes.
You have the podium. You have the floor.
I wish to speak. I want to be able to tell my story. You know, there have been some issues going around and stories about Gail Cheneyfield Jenkins, and I'm really going to tell what's going on in the city of Newark. You know, there was a group called the Council of Elders, and in 2013-14, they made a decision as to who they were going to support to run for mayor. And I had already made a decision that I was running for Central Ward. And in doing so, I was going up against an incumbent. I was going up knowing that I had lost my home in foreclosure. I was going up knowing that I had IRS issues that I have subsequently, my husband and I have taken care of. And I also was going up against a woman who said that there was some money that was owed to her from my 2006 fund campaign, in which she subsequently was paid. And based on that, when I came on the council, I had a relationship with several council members, some of whom I served with on the council and some who I did not. But I had a relationship, and I had a relationship with the administration. And it deteriorated. And one of the reasons why it deteriorated was because of my relationship with 4 of my Hispanic council colleagues. It was said, you know, why are you hanging out with those guys? You shouldn't be hanging out with them. And if they recall history.
I'm glad I'm out.
You're what?
I'm glad I'm out.
You're glad you're out of what, the Hispanic relationship? Okay. But, well, at the time you were there. Okay? And
Latin relationship.
there was the Latin relationship. Okay, the Latin relationship. Well, the 3 Hispanics and the 1 white guy. And so based on that relationship, I was reprimanded on more than one occasion, but I've never been one of those people who allowed somebody to choose my friends nor choose my enemies. After that, there was an issue in which there was a discussion amongst some council people to change the presidency, and we did not do so. And I got accused of being disloyal. As a matter of fact, Councilman McCollum was at that meeting in which we were berated for our disloyalty. And then I subsequently supported Kim Gaddy for the school board. And that was seen as Gail was going rogue and not being supportive and being loyal. And then I supported Phil Murphy for the for governor. But the following year, I supported Charles Love and Deborah Terrell. I'm saying all this to say that, you know, I have been the representation of a lot of people in the city of Newark here. There have been people, workers, residents, who've been intimidated, their character has been assassinated. I've been talked about, and that's all fine because, you know, that comes with being a public figure. But, you know, I see and I hear senior citizens or I hear residents saying, Gail, they've said this about you and they've said that about you. And I find it interesting that even when my council colleagues, and I wouldn't wish this on anybody, but even when my council colleagues were not aligned with the administration, they were never attacked. And I'm glad you weren't. And my council colleagues on June 6th of this year said to me, Gail, can we get this together? And I said, I can't get on the team because of the simple fact I've been disrespected. And I've seen things that have happened that I don't agree with. And, you know, you all do whatever you got to do, and we'll still be friends, and we'll still have a relationship. But when I have council colleagues go behind my back and then talk about my husband and I to seniors or misrepresent and try to characterize us in ways that are not true, you know, I'm going to fight that. Because I don't talk about other people, family members, okay? Not my council colleagues, okay? I've left all of your family members off and not ever attacked your family members. And anybody can say anything about somebody's family member. But the one thing I will say is the reason why I did not say anything sooner was because I just thought that I would be allowed and respected for a decision that I made. But in 2015, my name was taken, 2016, my name was taken off the campaign fund elect report for Team Baraka. My colleagues were aware of it, and so when people say, oh, Gail didn't want to get on the team, we wrote her a letter. By the time I received the letter, my council colleagues will tell you that 8 of them were invited to 4 meetings, and people were being interviewed for the position of Central Ward Councilwoman since 2015. And I'm supposed to take that and be respectful and say, okay, people say, oh, well, your husband got fired. Yeah, my husband got fired in 2015, and there were things I voted for that I was in agreement with, and those things that I didn't agree with, I didn't vote on. But let me tell you one thing. For those people who are the political insiders, you know, I was told that in 2011, 2010, when my house was in foreclosure and I was in need of assistance, there was a program that was offered by the Essex County Division of Community Action. And my husband and I took advantage of that, because it was offered and it was legally done. We were paid a month and a half rent and security. And I worked for the Division of Community Action from March 21st, 2011 until October. It was not because I was dismissed for anything that was illegal. It was because my services there were not a good fit. And so for someone to turn around and say that they were going to put on Facebook that Gail Cheneyfield Jenkins stole money or misappropriated funds and try to mischaracterize something that my husband and I needed and were taking advantage of getting done, I'm not going to allow. I mean, I've heard the comments about, oh, you know, Gail's not effective and all those other things because I'm not on Team Baraka. You know, at the end of the day, I'm not on Team Baraka for a number of reasons. But one of the reasons is for the abuse of power. I'm not on the Team Baraka because I cannot believe that any of my council colleagues, like you all said that people have come up to you about the health insurance, that none of these women have come up to you and said what they've had to go through as far as having to have sex in order to get a job, or they've been abused, or they've been talked about, or they've been ridiculed as far as the men and women of the city of Newark. So when Gail Cheneyfield Jenkins didn't get on the steps of City Hall on June 22nd, 2016, I was not up there because I represent the workers, I represent the city employees, I represent the residents who have been punished, who have been intimidated, who have been harassed, who have been talked about, who've been ridiculed, who have had to work side by side with somebody that doesn't do their job and won't do it because they're politically connected to somebody, or the no-show jobs. I've been there because of the pledge of loyalty I didn't take. Well, loyalty to me doesn't mean that when you kick me in my behind, I don't say ouch. I'm not going to be disrespected. I'm not going to be treated any kind of way. And I thank my council colleagues who have stood by me. But you know what? At the end of the day, I never thought that I would not run oppose. I don't think any elected official in their right mind thinks they're not going to have opposition, that somebody's not going to challenge them for the seat, because who are we to think we're the only ones in the city who can do that particular job? So for those people who talk about the fact, oh, well, your husband put something on Facebook. Yeah, and now he's being sued. I dare him to be sued, because you know what? The person who's talking about suing my husband just had their legal fees paid by the city of Newark and taxpayers. So you got money now to sue Kevin? Please do so. But understand, when you sue Kevin Jenkins about what he put on Facebook, you now have to prove it's not true. We are tired. There are too many people who are tired of walking around. Vendors, people were told not to contribute to my campaign. People were told, you know, don't talk to Gail, you know, and I get that. I mean, there's department heads that told me that they can't provide services for the Central Ward. You're not going to penalize the residents of the Central Ward because I'm sitting there. So at the end of the day, that although I'm being intimidated, and although I'm being talked about, and my character is trying to be assassinated, which you will not do, even to the point where I reported it to the police department, where I was getting harassing text messages and phone calls. I haven't heard anything back from the police department. My character was misrepresented. I was at Prudential Center. I was drunk. I don't even drink like that, you know, but they didn't realize that sitting in the box was a federal judge, Mayor Sharp James, Marilyn Davis, and the president and vice president, the president of NJIT. So to characterize me as all of a sudden being a drunk is disgusting. But I'm not going to be intimidated. But I am putting the people in the city of Newark on notice. The Cheneyfield name means something. My father, Joe Cheneyfield, and my mother, Martha Cheneyfield, did plant seeds in this city that I'm able to reap the benefits of the harvest. So no, I'm not Dr. King. I've not been to the mountaintop, and I know longevity is good and it has its place. But if any harm comes to my husband or I want you all to understand that I put it on record officially today. And for those people out there who are listening, I do want you to understand there are feds in this building. And it's not because Gail Cheneyfield Jenkins called the federal government in here to inspect things that are taking place. It is because of actions of employees and people within this administration that have brought it upon themselves. And that's one of the reasons why I did not get up there on June 22nd and sit there. I respect my council colleagues, and I expect them to respect me going forward. And whatever decision Gail Cheneyfield makes, understand I'm from Newark and I'm for Newark, and I will not walk around in fear. I was told to change my phone number. Council President said, Gail, that's happened to me. Change your phone number. Okay. I'm not going to change my phone number. And I'm not in any way, shape, or form afraid of people posting things on Facebook. Because one thing you can say about Kevin Jenkins, he was man enough to put his name behind what he stood for and what he said. I thank you all for allowing me to speak more than 5 minutes. But I just wanted to tell my story, because I will not be defined by people saying, oh, she was planning to do this all along, or oh, this is why she didn't do it. And then you want to turn around and say, Gail Cheneyfield hasn't been doing anything for the Central Ward. I will put my record of what I've done for the city of Newark, not just for the Central Ward, but anything I've done when I was at large against any elected official. Not to say I've been better, but I've always been for the people, and I've always done what I know was right for the city of Newark. I stand on my record. Thank you.
Mr. Clerk, do we have another speaker?
No other speakers. A motion to close the public hearing and go into executive session?
For those, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Gonzalez?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
Jenkins?
Yes.
Yes.
Osborne?
Yes.
Donna?
Yes.
Ramos?
Yes.
President Crump?
Yes. For those of you who are here for the, particularly Miss Glover and her team, I don't think Miss Glover, Aisha, I know you've been here since 10. There was a mistake in the time, but we must go into executive session. So if you can bear with us just a little longer, so you can make your report.
You need me?
Yeah, for 2 seconds.
Is it a doctor in the house?
Wade has 5 to 10 minutes to talk about the homeless program.
10 minutes.
We are out of
I thought
executive.
it was 5. Now you duplicated
I said 5 to 10. So those who can stay, I've explained to them that most of us, no, that all of us did not know that he was appearing this morning. And I've asked, can it wait until next Tuesday, and he has informed me that it is so critical. So, if you can, in the absence of the discussion about Dejana, we have a few minutes. Please step to the microphone.
Good afternoon, council members.
Good afternoon.
Dr. Mark Wade, Director of the Department of Health and Community Wellness. But thank you for the opportunity to indulge me. This is for your information. We are embarking on a 3.5-month winter warming shelter that will encompass taking care of the code blue for the citizens of Newark. So if you just bear with me, I'm going to read a statement which hopefully will answer most of your questions, and I'll be open to entertain any questions. Beginning 2014, the Department of Health began utilizing the space at JFK to operate an overnight code blue warming shelter to house the homeless when the weather dropped to near freezing temperatures and during severe weather, like a snowstorm. This was an interagency operation involving resources from OEM, recreation, public safety, public buildings, and the department provided the staffing and coordination of the operation there at JFK. And as a result, the hours of operation were 7 p.m. to 6 a.m., again, once a code was called when the temperature dropped below 25 degrees. This happened for about 20 days in 2017. The cost of the operation was borne by each respective department. For the Department of Health, we had to use our staff, paid them overtime, which was, for those 20 days, approximately $53,000. The other departmental costs from the other departments averaged on total of about another $40,000. So we spent $93,000 for 20 days of code blue warming at JFK. Challenge was, at 6 a.m., even if the temperature was higher than when they came in the night before, we had to release them because JFK is used for programming of children and adults for Newark. So, the problem we now face is that we cannot use JFK anymore. Why? In June of this year, the State Department of Health adopted rules governing emergency sheltering for the homeless. The regulations establish standards to ensure that a healthy, safe, and the welfare of the shelter for the welfare of the shelter occupants. The City of Newark's prior use and intent of use of JFK for the purpose of sheltering will not meet the new state guidelines for such. And they involved areas like bathroom and toilet facilities, the amount of space needed between each resident, how many residents can be in a particular area, etc. And I have a couple of pages of those regulations. But the bottom line is JFK does not qualify in terms of state code to be used as such. As a result, we find ourselves with the need, ethically, morally, health-wise, to provide emergency sheltering for Code Blue. But we were able to secure a relationship with an organization that had the physical space capacity to handle the approximately 100 people, plus or minus, that we find unsheltered of the homeless community. In other words, when we look at the homeless facilities that are already in business of taking care of the homeless, there still is a population that is unsheltered because they don't meet the qualification of those shelters. All other shelters have guidelines that have to be met, and if you don't meet it, you're on the street. Okay. Our solution is this. The department proposes to issue an emergency declaration to provide Code Blue and winter sheltering for the homeless and the unsheltered residents of Newark. This approach is to address obvious needs to provide shelter for the unsheltered homeless living in the streets, especially in the hot spots like Penn Station, the public library, Francisco Park, etc. The vendor that we are engaging to provide that service is the Emergency Housing Services, which is owned by the Dolnick sisters. It's located at 224 Sussex Avenue. It is a facility that already is identified and meets all codes and has been used for a shelter, has a long history in Newark. They have a 480-bed capacity. Their previous occupants who left on November 1st was a correctional facility group, but now we have a vacant building that has the capacity to shelter our residents, and we are entering into an agreement, or proposing to enter into agreement with them to provide 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week for 3.5 months of sheltering for our homeless population, our unsheltered homeless population, which will begin mid-December, which is next week, because it's going to get cold next week, through March 30th. The arrangement would cost approximately $111,000 per month for a projected 100 residents, and that's based on a daily rate of $37 per person per night. again, for 3.5 months. The vendor will be required to utilize a coordinated intake process that ensures priority for Newark residents. The proposed contract will only cover services provided to the homeless residents of Newark. A progressive intake process will also identify non-Newark residents, which will avail us the opportunity to redirect them to their respective municipalities. The services that will be provided will include 2 meals a day, individual bedding, etc., and all of those services. An intake process that will identify what the other needs of that population are so that they can be referred to social services, mental health services, etc. That's part of the intake process. We have also identified and are engaging or propose to engage into a memorandum of understanding with 2 other entities, which are the Bridges Outreach and Project Live, whose business is to transport the homeless to identified facilities, and so we will engage with them at no additional cost to us to do what they do, and now we have a place for them to bring the residents to and take them back to whatever designated area. How are we going to pay for this?
Oh, definitely.
The funding for this one-time 3.5, 4 months service is going to come 100% from the Department of Health budget, a combination of grant and city process funds from unused revenue. Like we've had employees that we had a break in employment, not break in employment, a lag between hire and those salary lines accrue. Again, this is a one-time opportunity for us to use those revenues for the purpose of providing sheltering. Okay? I can go into detail about any component that you would like, but again, for informational purposes, because we're committed to make sure that the City Council knows what we're doing and has an opportunity to engage us before we do it. That's why we considered it an emergency.
Yes.
We've been working on this, and we don't want it to be cold next week, and we have nowhere to shelter.
Thank you so much for insisting. You have information that we really do need. Can we get a copy of that? And Councilman Amador
Yes, you may.
wishes to ask questions.
One simple statement and a question. The statement is that I totally applaud and support this plan. First of all, I think it's the first comprehensive plan that I have seen that has beginning, middle, and an end. Second, because of the difficulty that we had in the past in getting ID from homeless folks, how do you intend to find out who's from Newark and who's not from Newark if most of them don't have ID?
Okay. I'm going to defer.
And let me give you an example. Sometime in the past, about a year ago, we had a situation where a lot of homeless were basically building a town underneath Route 1 on Stockton Street. And one of the biggest problems that we had at the time was identifying those homeless, finding ID with those homeless. And in some cases, the police department got involved, and after the police department got involved, they became identified as Newark residents. So I think you need to look at that and find a way of, either through the municipal ID card or whatever, find a way of identifying them before you put them on this plan.
Well, that's part of the traditional intake process, but I'll ask my teammate who's more expert to respond for us, Ms. Donaldson, who heads our homeless
Council members.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Vicki Donaldson, 691 Elizabeth Avenue, Newark, New Jersey. Director of Homeless Services for the City of Newark.
Could you speak up?
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So Councilman, to answer your question, currently we provide every day about 15 IDs to persons who are homeless. So the criteria is that they must provide us something that determines or establishes their prior residence. We have 2 or 3 techniques that we use to verify the information the person is actually coming to us with. So the shelter will have what we call low barrier and no barrier entry, which means that the first night you come to the shelter, if you don't have ID, you can stay. The next night, we direct you to the health department, who will either verify your residence and say that you are a resident, or say that you're not.
I'm sorry, I have questions.
Councilwoman Cheney.
First of all,
Jenkins.
I just want to say that I'm very glad to see the fact that GEO, the building that GEO was occupying, is not going to be underutilized. That was my concern when you all had mentioned Miller Street as a possible facility. So is Miller Street still on the table?
I believe that there are discussions ongoing about long-term use, and I think Miller Street, as well as this facility, might be among the possibilities for a longer term. We hope that we'll demonstrate such excellence in this project over the winter that we'll be able to do it year-round.
All right, so when Dr. Wade referred to sheltered and unsheltered, can you please just be specific in what you mean with that? Who falls into those 2 categories, sheltered and unsheltered population that will be going into this facility?
Sheltered persons may be in shelter but being exited. They may be newly homeless coming from a sheltered environment. Unsheltered populations we're referring to them as the persons on the street. We tried to give it a little bit more dignity by saying they're simply unsheltered, but we're targeting the people who are not welcome in shelter. Not welcome, that's a bad statement. I apologize. Don't meet the qualifications for existing shelters.
Right.
These are people who frequent every night the airport, Penn Station, the library, the parks, the railroad area, and we have, Councilman, a meeting scheduled for next week with the police and all of the airport people to talk about how we will approach accessing those remote areas.
Okay, that leads to my next question about case management. Who's going to be providing case management? Is that going to be Project Live and Bridges in addition to the City of Newark?
The project, Councilwoman, will include 2 full-time case managers on site.
Oh, good.
And Bridges and Project Live both have case management components in their programs. For example, the importance of something like Project Live is not only do they do outreach and can transport people, but they have full case management components in their programs. And Bridges has an extensive outreach and case management program.
No, I'm aware of that. That's why I want to put it on the record. But they also get paid by Essex County for that kind of services. So in that $100,000 that Dr. Wade referred to, some of that money will be appropriated towards those organizations to assist with the additional case management that's going to be needed. Am I correct in assuming that?
No, the case management component is a part of that $37 a night per person for the full period of this operation. The difference, I guess, is that we already fund, the health department provides homeless services already. We have about 75 people a week who walk in. We can still refer people to shelters. We still can provide case management as a part of what we do as the health department. This is a program of winter sheltering that we will manage but not operate.
No, I'm asking a specific question. Maybe I'm not saying it correctly. The council was the one who got GEO. Myself and Councilman Osborne were the one who got GEO to be able to get the bed increase for the prison reentry population. So my question is, you're talking about at least 480 people now being housed in that 27 Sussex Avenue. So I'm asking, with the increase of the population, you're saying you're going to have 2 full-time case managers in addition to what you have at the health department, and then Bridges is adding to it and Project Live.
Madam Chairperson,
Yeah.
let me.
Excuse me, Dr. Wade. Khalif, can you come around? Please proceed.
Yeah, let
I
me
just
speak
was
to y'all.
trying to get his attention.
Yeah, sorry.
Let me redefine it for us.
Please.
Yeah, it was expected.
GEO is contracted with the Dolnick sisters, okay, for 2 more years in that building. GEO moved their entire program
Right.
out of that building.
Absolutely.
So the building's empty.
Right.
GEO and the Dolnick sisters have renegotiated their contract
Right.
so that we have 4 months that the city can contract the Dolnick sisters to provide this homeless sheltering capability. So
Okay,
we're
because
not-
they've done it before. That's why I'm just trying to find out.
Right, I'm
Who's providing the case management?
the case management services, the homeless shelter with its case management services is being provided by the Dolnick sisters, who we are contracting to do this for the city.
That's what I was trying to find out. And so, in addition to the Dolnick sisters with Project Live
Project Live
and Bridges,
and Bridges, our contract with them is to provide transportation.
transportation only, not case management. So the staff that you still have at the health department will be providing the case management as well.
Councilwoman, if I might.
You need to step up.
Sorry. We already have an ESG contract with Bridges. Bridges has agreed through an MOU to provide transportation of the persons that they will engage at these hotspots, if you will, and that is at no cost to us. Many of the people that they serve, the city provide services to for the city, will be able to be referred to Bridges for their regular programming. That is also true of not just Project Live and Bridges, but about 15 other organizations with whom we do business already, with whom we have contracts, with whom we provide funding.
Okay, so with most of the shelters, when you go in, it's either all male shelter or all female shelter or families. That's one of the problems that has plagued people. So what is this, how are we going to combine that? So if a family comes in, like if they go to Sierra House, they can go in as, you know what I'm saying?
Well,
like UCC will take families, okay? So how are we setting up this structure, and also for the LGBTQ community? How are we offering them opportunities as well?
So this is no barrier, low barrier. If a family comes into shelter, we have the option, as we do every day, to attempt to place them in a family shelter. If that's not possible, this facility is set up in a circular wing so that we're able to separate populations for safety, for convenience, to isolate families, to make sure children are safe. It has got tremendous security, state-of-the-art security and
Oh yeah, because it's used to house former prisoners, so I know you can't get in and can't get out when you want to.
We will even have the ability in crisis, like if it were a cold blue night and there was extraordinary demand, we could in fact also use parts of the second floor, which are separatable by both safety latches and elevator controls, so that we could keep the family safe.
I'm asking all these questions because, first of all, the homeless issue is something that we all collectively have been trying to work on. And as Councilman Amador has stated, this is the first time we've had a presentation from the Health Department where there is a beginning, a middle, and an end, okay? But I also wanted to put it on the record because, as I stated, I am extremely familiar with the building from when the Dolnick sisters had it. I'm familiar with the building when GEO retrofitted it. And at the time when the Dolnick sisters had it, they only had a 220 some odd bed capacity. Councilman Osborne and I worked on with GEO to increase the number for the reentry population, and they didn't need to use it. And with the defunding of the ICE program, and so they had to move the population under Chris Christie. So I'm very familiar with the facility. I just want us to put it on the record because you have residents and citizens who will not know unless we explain government to them to the fullest capacity because they're listening. So when they see somebody and they know somebody who needs someplace, the first response is always send them to the Y. In the city of Newark, send them to the Y. So now people will understand and they will know beyond a shadow of a doubt there is a place on 227 Sussex Avenue that's going to be operated by the city of Newark for the unsheltered and the sheltered.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Anything else, Councilman? Go
One
right
more,
ahead.
one more point. When I said it, that we finally have a beginning, a middle, and an end, the beginning is here. The middle can be expended, and the end can be changed. And the argument is that every homeless person, the reason for them become homeless is not the same. It changes. So we need to go a little further than this. We need to make it permanent, if possible. And second, we need to go into the phase of identifying the reasons why they're homeless and treat them if possible. Treat the reason why they're homeless. So this could be the beginning of the change, even though it's a temporary change. And I totally support this plan. But based on this small plan, let's work on a more expanding and permanent plan to see if we can deal with this problem once for all. And become a model, probably, for other cities. Because Atlantic City, for example, had a huge problem because of all the changes that went on when the casinos were built. And their population was reduced in a very, very sensitive and dignified manner. And that's exactly what we need to do with this issue. And I applaud you for this.
Thank you.
I have a quick comment.
Madam President?
And I'll send you
Councilman
I'll send you some of the ideas that I had that I presented about 3 or 4 years ago, and I'll send them to you.
Thank you.
I'm so sorry. I did tell you the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. Councilman Ramos, Councilman McCallum, and that will be the end. I promise you, I will. The Councilwoman, we will stay here till the end.
Madam
Councilman Ramos was first.
Yeah, Madam President, could I just speak?
Hold on.
Don't we have somebody can speak after that?
No.
Oh, no, we're
Hearing of
finished.
citizens portion is closed.
We're in, the hearing of citizens is closed. Dr. Wade, Council Ramos,
Yeah, Madam President,
I'm sorry you were late, dear.
They're doing a presentation.
This is a presentation.
But I seen people speak after the people.
I beg your pardon?
Presentations have been done since the,
We had the hearing. Munira spoke, some other people spoke. Councilman Ramos?
I just want to say that I had an opportunity to talk briefly to Dr. Wade yesterday about this program. The state mandates by law that municipalities and other local areas develop some kind of initiative during very cold days as a result of the Code Blue program. It's an unfunded mandate by the state of New Jersey, and I believe that what Dr. Wade is presenting addresses that, but it also includes a housing plan that extends beyond a Code Blue. So again, this is a program that if it's approved by this council, the city will partner with Urban Renewal, which is the nonprofit entity, to provide housing during the winter months. They are going to be very creative this year in identifying ESG and other funding in order to make this work. In order for us to sustain this moving forward, and as Councilman Amador mentioned, to possibly expand the city's ability to provide housing year-round, it's going to require resources. And that's part of the conversation that this council has to be ready to have with Dr. Wade, because they don't have, magic pot of money that they can dip into in order to fund, 30-something dollars a day times 100 beds times 365 days a year. That's a very significant kind of investment that the city is going to make, but needs to make. So I just want to get this council ready. We had a brief conversation yesterday about possibly the county looking to in some way support this, but again, we also have very limited funds as well. So, but he will be making an ask of this body at some point for some investment. So,
Councilman McCallum has been sitting on his comment.
Huh? Oh, no. Dr. Wade, there was some discussion a few weeks ago at a council meeting. If you're going to move forward with anything on the Miller Street School, you need to have a conversation with Councilman James, because he didn't seem to know anything about the project. And
Councilwoman
this presentation
and Councilman
is
Amador.
yeah, he had some, he was kind of a little bit upset about it.
Let me just add
Councilman
something to
Amador.
what Councilman Ramos was, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, darling.
Let me add something to what Councilman Ramos was saying before in terms of resources. With all this development coming to the city of Newark that we are looking at almost daily, I don't see any reason why, if we are innovative enough, we can't come up with the resources enough to sustain this program all year round.
You're absolutely right.
That's what I wanted to say. I wanted to talk about to make sure that we get a list from EHD in regards to the Affordable Trust Fund, the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, because there was monies that were put in. So I just want to know for the last 4 years, who has put money in and who has not. But more importantly, Dr. Wade, going forward, that's one of the reasons why I wanted you all to put the information out there. The city of Newark does itself an injustice when we do not tell of the services that we do have, because number one, people don't know, and they don't know how to access the services. But more importantly, we don't recognize the gap we have in the services if we don't talk about our problems. So when my council colleagues talk about the fact that we should be sustaining this, that's why I was asking Ms. Donaldson and yourself about case management, because I know that means money. So we have to make sure that people understand we have to make allocations. And if that means one less festival gets paid for out of the city, then that means one less festival gets paid for, because we're impacting the lives of people. And then that means we also have to address with a partnership with Newark Housing Authority, as well as with other developers, in order to have sustainable, rapid rehousing taking place, because people cannot stay in shelters, and nor is that our desire as a city to have them remain in that environment. But this is a quick fix, a much-needed fix, and it's not a Band-Aid. But we also have to address what happens afterwards, the next phase. And that means addressing the amount of homelessness and how do we address it. I find it very interesting at the planning board that there was a house, and they got shot down for the Board of Adjustment, because the gentleman wanted to change his house from being a one-family home, and he was, for the last 30-some-odd years, he was renting out his rooms, but it was owner-occupied. So it wasn't your typical single-room occupancy building, and it was voted down on the same day that the council voted for Airbnb. So we have to look at, if you have a person, and he had letters from all of his neighbors saying that he had people living with him and his wife and daughters, and he never had a problem. So we have to look at, maybe we have to go back when SROs had a bad reputation and we banned them, maybe we can look at it because everybody may not need or want a living room, a dining room. They might want just a bedroom and a communal kitchen in which they can cook and have a safe environment. So they can maybe pay $300 or $400 a month in rent, which may be affordable for some people, as opposed to forcing people into, because of the legislation that was written in 1990 or in the 80s that banned single-room occupancies. Now we can look at and address all of the housing issues and look at it in totality. So thank you very much, Council President, for making this happen.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Keep up the good work. We want to thank your staff.
Thank you.
Two things. Number one, I ask if we could have a copy of your written statement.
Yes, ma'am.
And
you
number
will have
two,
that.
can you include those agencies that provide wraparound services? I'm just curious to see who our partners are.
We can do that.
Thank you very much.
Can I just conclude saying that
You have 1 minute.
I mean, homelessness obviously is not a singular issue, singular solution, and not a singular responsibility. We're just presenting what we have come up with as a capability to address the next 4 months, this cold season. We are very engaged in a long-term homelessness solution that we look forward to the opportunity to present in much greater detail. This was just not the opportunity to do that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you once
Thank you for hearing
again.
this. Okay.
And we thank the officers of the day. For those of you who are here for Dejana, we understand that we paid the bill and service has been restored. So there is no need for a discussion.
Hopefully, we won't be back in 3 months.
Oh, we won't be back next Monday.
Oh, please. I'm very happy. And I want to thank the clerk publicly for doing something that turned out to be very important and very successful. But you do have to let us know. You know, we lost half the folks because they said to me, Mildred, we need to be out of here by 1. I said, fine, we'll be out of here by 1. It is now 2 o'clock almost. So. And I told the council members about the dish.
Your colleague asked me what was
So, is it possible